Hey everyone, and welcome back to What's the Plan, the podcast where we dive into our careers in the architecture and urban planning field. I'm Haley.
And I'm Andrea. So Haley, what's the plan this week?
This week's plan is all about the City of Toronto's housing updates.
Yeah, so last year, specifically in our housing mini-series, it can be said that we were quite critical of the city's lack of action when it comes to providing affordable housing, especially in comparison to other cities like Montreal. However, it's not all doom and gloom. And for example, hey Haley, did you know that Toronto now has a National Housing Day?
I mean, now I do.
Yeah, so this past November, John Tory, along with Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing for the Ontario government, have proclaimed November 22nd as National Housing Day.
Wow.
Yeah, so however, this holiday actually goes back further to 2000 when it was known as a National Housing Strategy, a day to raise awareness for housing and homelessness in Canada. And knowing John Tory, he loves pomp and circumstance and declaring days for celebration. I hear that he has established another national holiday regarding housing.
Wow. Now let's get into some other things the city has done to help with affordable housing and homelessness. Mm-hmm. The first of three updates we're going to address today is the Inclusionary Zoning policy. So, on November 12th, 2021, the City of Toronto adopted Amendment 557 to the official plan as well as Zoning Bylaw 941-2021 with the purpose of introducing new requirements for inclusionary zoning. Andrea, do you want to take a stab at what inclusionary zoning is and what this might mean for housing in Toronto?
If I'm thinking correctly, I think inclusionary zoning is the abolishment of single residential housing zoning? Or the inclusion of more than one potential housing type in a single area?
Yeah, so that is along the lines of what it is. I guess rather than abolishing, as you said, it's more of including various peoples into new policies to make housing more available to all. And I guess it's pretty much exactly how it sounds. Zoning referring to regulations and inclusionary referring to the inclusion of all peoples. So the City of Toronto introduced this amendment and bylaw pursuant to the Planning Act, which, for those of you who may not know, is a piece of Ontario legislation that sets out the ground rules for land use planning in the province. Essentially, it's like a rule book to how land use planning can work in the province. So in a more technical sense, inclusionary zoning is a land use planning tool that allows municipalities within the province to require new residential development to include affordable housing to create mixed income housing. So now, what does this mean specifically for the City of Toronto? The city states that as the city grows, they want to ensure their neighborhoods provide housing options for a full range of incomes and households. By implementing inclusionary zoning policies, the city hopes to increase the supply of affordable housing, creating more inclusive, complete, and equitable communities, and support a diverse range of housing supplies.
Okay, so that all sounds great. There's a lot of buzzwords that were used. But how does this policy actually make a difference?
That's a very good question. So with this new policy in place, there are new requirements for developers in the city. And some of these include requiring 5 to 10% of condominium developments to provide units as affordable housing, ensuring units stay affordable for at least 99 years going forward, setting rent and ownership prices based on new income-based definitions of affordable, monitoring and reporting of the affordable housing to ensure that it remains affordable and not just at the early stages of development, and a lot more. So all in all, this is a great step for the city to ensure housing is affordable for both renters and homeowners in terms of fighting with the residents and not for developers, as we've mentioned in past episodes where developers can be a little bit sneaky.
Yeah, a little bit power hungry and money hungry.
Yeah, exactly. So with this tool in place, the city's trying their best to avoid all of that.
Okay, so next up, we have the 3-year service plan and 2022 infrastructure plan to support homelessness. So, as we discussed in episode 12 of the podcast, homelessness is on the rise in Toronto, and there are limited resources for those experiencing it to find permanent housing. So, on November 12th, Toronto City Council voted to approve a number of initiatives that support efforts to build and strengthen a responsive homelessness service system. So, in particular, there are 2 initiatives that received approval. The first one being Shelter Support and Housing Administration, SSHA for short, Homelessness Solution Service Plan. It's quite a mouthful.
Wow, yeah, that's a tongue twister for sure.
Yeah, the second one is equally as long. So the second initiative is the 2022 Shelter Infrastructure Plan, Committee Engagement Review, and amendments to contracts and purchase orders to support shelter services.
Okay, that is very long.
Yeah, I think the city just needs to condense these words so it makes it easier for everyday people to understand what's happening. But yeah, luckily we are here to help break that down, what it means. So the SSH Service Plan is a plan that identifies implementation priorities to guide the city and its partners in the homelessness service system for the next 3 years. So what this means is that they use an integrated and person-centered approach to address homelessness, which means like they focus on the person itself and what they can do and not their condition or disability. So finding homes, whether or not like it doesn't matter what reason that led them to homelessness, but rather like just making sure that person has a house. And then this plan was actually informed by a report from earlier in 2021 called the Street Needs Assessment, and from there 6 implementation priorities were identified. The first being advancing reconciliation, which is meaningfully addressing Indigenous homelessness, focusing on equity, addressing anti-Black racism, and incorporating an intersectional and inclusive approach. The third priority is delivering high-quality services, which is improve access to homelessness services, enhance safety and quality, provide a range of person-centered supports. The fourth is reducing chronic homelessness, enhancing housing-focused service delivery, prioritizing available housing resources for maximum impact. The fifth priority is developing an integrated system response, which is implement shelter diversion approaches, increase their system coordination and planning, as well as enhance collaboration and engagement. And the last one is strengthening and modernizing the sector. So enhance system tools and data, invest in staff and sector capacity. Because a lot of times, a lot of these shelters, they're not really technology forward. So by bringing them into the 21st century and using technology to figure out how many beds are available, what resources are available, makes everything a lot more efficient and smoothly.
For sure, yeah.
So, Haley, what do you think the infrastructure plan is about, now that we know what the SSH plan is about? You can use the name as a hint.
So I would think that the infrastructure plan is a plan that puts I would assume it is what it sounds like. So a plan to put the infrastructure first. Not first, but to improve infrastructure to be able to provide quality for people who need it.
Yeah, so the infrastructure plan is a report that provides information and updates on infrastructure.
Okay. So I mean,
Yeah. You're there on the right line. So yeah, it updates on infrastructure, procurement, and community engagement related to the city's shelter projects. So the main takeaway from this plan is that the city is in the process of developing an operational plan to transition out of the COVID-19 hotel response sites. Because, as we all know, this is important as temporary housing of the homelessness does not mean the eradication of homelessness. It just means the problem will, reoccur in later months.
It's very temporary, as the name suggests.
Yeah. And as for when this will occur, it will depend on any future changes to public health guidance, ongoing assessment of shelter demands, and the availability of supportive housing opportunities, and, of course, COVID itself. So, hopefully with Toronto or in Ontario looking to reopen again, this plan will continue to progress. However, the city states that they are focused on working with service partners to help move people into permanent housing whenever possible and provide social support to help ensure a safe transition. And all of this aligns with their Housing First model that prioritizes working with individuals experiencing homelessness to secure housing. And further details of this on the full transition and relocation plan will be shared in the first quarter of 2022 of the city's website. So we will have to stay tuned for what exactly is the plan to house everybody.
We'll provide an update for sure.
Yeah. And a secondary takeaway from the infrastructure plan is that it outlines work that the Shelter Support and Housing Administration, the initiative from the previous plan, will undertake to develop a 3-year capital infrastructure strategy. And what this means is that it is a plan to identify real estate and infrastructure solutions to align with the priorities identified in the service plan. So those 6 priorities. Finding ways to actually build projects and fund those projects. And to meet the city's commitment to long-term housing and shelter emergency needs. And this work will be done in collaboration with CreateTO and Corporate Real Estate Management. The CreateTO is an agency to manage the city's portfolio of real estate assets, and Corporate Real Estate Management, also known as CREM. The division is responsible for the operational day-to-day stewardship and planning of the city's real estate assets. And as I mentioned before earlier, I don't know about you, Haley, but is it just me, or does our government have way too many agencies and task force to complete similar tasks?
Yeah, I think their approach is good because there is so many things that should be addressed, but the fact that it seems at least that nothing is being done by all these agencies with such similar goals is making us question whether or not it's actually necessary. So if we were to see more progress, maybe we wouldn't be thinking this, but who knows? Hopefully as years go by, we'll actually notice the difference in these agencies and notice that we need these different agencies.
Yeah, at this moment it kind of feels like they're just siloing off everybody, and if you're not in constant communication with other agencies or task forces or groups within the government, you don't really know what's happening, and it kind of makes it a lot harder to work on projects. And also,
for sure.
I feel like it feels like they're purposely making the execution of policies overcomplicated to appear that they're actually doing stuff. And also just to deter everyday folks from kind of figuring out what is actually happening. Because if it's so confusing, a lot of people wouldn't even want to learn about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but anyways, of course, City didn't just end the plans there, but they have reiterated their request to the federal and provincial governments to deliver funding to support COVID-19 response, as well as sustainable and long-term funding to support much-needed harm reduction and mental health case management, as well as supportive housing targets of 1,800 new units every year for 10 years.
Wow, that sounds really good.
Well, the thing is, they need money in order for these to happen, which is why they attached at the bottom of their plan to grill it into the heads of other people to say, please give us the money or else none of this good stuff will happen. So
that's true.
Cross our fingers they get the funding, because we do need more housing for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. But I guess as you mentioned, we'll be hearing more about it as the end of the first quarter of 2022 approaches. So we'll provide an update when that time comes and when updates are available. But for now, the final update we'll be addressing in today's episode is the progress being made on the Housing TO 2020 to 2030 Action Plan. So to start off, what is the Housing TO 2020 to 2023 Action Plan? Yeah. Essentially, it's a document that provides a blueprint for action across the full housing spectrum, from homelessness to rental and ownership housing to long-term care for seniors. It also provides new strategic city investments directed to enhancing eviction prevention measures. It also provides for new strategic city investments directed to enhancing eviction prevention measures, maintaining and sustaining Toronto Community Housing Corporation, and more. It is a people-centered plan that was developed with the objective of improving housing outcomes for current and future residents of Toronto. Some of these actions include promoting better access to good quality, safe, affordable housing and improved housing stability for residents struggling to maintain their existing homes. The vision of the Housing TO 2020 to 2030 Action Plan is that Toronto is a city with a diverse range of housing opportunities. The mission is to provide Torontonians with housing that is safe, affordable, and suitable to their needs. Key guiding principles for this plan are as follows. Identifying the needs of individuals and groups based on evidence and trends. 2, provide equitable and measurable housing opportunities that promote better health, social, and economic outcomes for people. 3, advance partnerships and collaborations across the housing spectrum to create innovative and long-lasting solutions to the housing crisis. And finally, promote strategic alignment of resources and actions by all orders of government to provide housing opportunities and effectively address homelessness.
Now, let's get into the actual progress that has been made. So, in no particular order, first up, we have the Housing Now initiative. And if I recall correctly, we briefly mentioned this initiative on the public transit episode, but the objective is to create mixed income, mixed use, transit-oriented communities with more than 5,000 affordable rental homes. And this will be done on 21 sites that are already owned by the city. And in 2021, the city has selected the first 3 sites to begin phase 1.
Wow, okay.
So as for built projects, the city has opened 220 homes with support services dedicated to people experiencing homelessness. And this includes the first of 2 modular supportive housing systems, or housing buildings, that were built with shipping containers and prefabbed on a separate site and then brought over into the actual site. And they were completed within 9 months of approval.
Wow.
Which is
really quick.
Quite amazing. That means they can do a lot more in future years as well. And in terms of response to homelessness, significant progress on delivering the 24-month COVID-19 Housing and Homelessness Response Plan through the Federal Rapid Housing Initiative will create a minimum of 860 new permanent supportive homes for people experiencing homelessness by the end of 2022. So in addition to like the modular homes that are built, like with this new initiative, like thousands will be housed more this year. And on the partnership side of things, the city has entered 3 new partnerships. The first, they partnered with Toronto Community Housing Corporation to create 450 supportive housing opportunities for people experiencing homelessness. And they're doing so through using vacant rent-geared to income apartments and layering on supportive services secured through the province. And the second partnership is the city has entered a partnership with United Property Resource Corporation to unlock the value of their real estate assets and help create 500 affordable homes over the next 5 to 7 years. And they have developed a memorandum of understanding with Mizwi Beek Development Corporation to establish them as the main intermediary between the city and Indigenous housing providers. So support the creation of 5,200 new affordable rental and supportive homes for Indigenous people by Indigenous people across the city. So which is about like 500 units a year. And for renters, the city has established a permanent tenant advisory committee on the protection of affordable rental housing. And this includes launching a new renter hub on the city's website and creating a city's first eviction prevention handbook. And this handbook was tested with input of tenants and stakeholders and outlines tenants' rights, types of evictions, tenant support resources, and where to go for help. So overall, they have advanced a new affordable housing definition linked to the income of low and of moderate income renters, which will help to attract and retain key workers in our city. As well, they has established a new multi-unit residential acquisition program aimed at protecting the existing supply of rental homes by removing market rental buildings from the speculative market and secure them as permanently affordable housing. And all of this is led by the Neighborhood Land Trust. And of course, new enhanced federal and provincial investments will be pivotal to Toronto's continued success. And they need capital funding to create new housing supply, ongoing operating funding for wraparound health, social, and housing supports. They also needed to create supportive housing opportunities for rent supports for households living in affordable housing and at risk of evictions, as well as funding for retrofit programs to improve the quality of existing homes.
So it sounds like they have a lot going on and a lot of new things that they want to do that are beneficial to, well, everyone, it sounds like. But I guess, once again, the biggest question is, how can the city afford this? And with the budgets they have in mind, will they be able to actually complete all of their plans?
Who knows? So we will have to stay tuned.
Yeah, we will once again provide an update once they're available. But understanding Toronto's housing updates was the plan for now. Listen to our next episode to continue figuring it out with us.
Thanks for following along to this episode. If you liked it, please give us a like, review, and subscribe for more. Until then, follow us on Instagram at What's the Plan Podcast for what the next plan is.